Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Herkman, and thanks for tuning into this week's Hump Day Health. So let's talk for a couple minutes about numbness and overwhelm being two sides of the same coin. So we've been dealing with a pandemic. I'm a New York City resident. This has been a reality for us for the last 2.5 months. And I have found in many conversations with people that this pandemic has created new issues and new dynamics, but it has also amplified old issues and old dynamics. And one of the things it has amplified for many people is the way we process our emotions, the way we deal with stress, the way we deal with uncertainty, the way we deal with anxiety. And sometimes what happens when we're dealing with a very intense situation where there's questions about survival, which when this whole pandemic started, a lot of us went into survival mode, right? People's biggest questions were about, illness, death, toilet paper. Sometimes when people are in those positions, they don't necessarily have the space to process their feelings. And so sometimes they feel a little numb. But what ends up happening sometimes over time is that you're not so numb anymore. And then all the emotions start coming to the surface, and then you feel overwhelmed. And so sometimes the numbness and overwhelm can work in a cycle. So here's the analogy for this week. Let's say you're sitting at your computer and you send a couple of print jobs to your printer, but your printer is offline. So what's going to happen? Nothing's going to come out of the printer. But let's say in a day or two, or in a week, or maybe even in a month, you turn on your printer. What's going to come out of the printer? All those print jobs that were in the queue. And it can feel overwhelming because you're standing there going, oh my gosh, so many print jobs are coming out here. And hopefully you have a good receiving tray. Sometimes you have to kind of move it quickly. So something similar happens for people emotionally, is that when you're in that survival place, sometimes you kind of go offline. And now that you don't feel as offline, where you're not just worrying about toilet paper, a lot of the emotions come to the surface. And this, I find, by the way, has happened for a lot of my clients who are healthcare workers. Being a healthcare worker and being in general in medicine, there's a certain amount of emotional detachment that is necessary for your job. Otherwise, you'll just walk around all day being a hot mess all the time. But what ends up happening for some people is that when we're dealing with a situation like we were dealing with there's such a high level of intensity and stress and not a lot of time for self-care, what ends up happening for some people is that they go into a numb place. And we see this numbness play out in a lot of ways. I'll give you an example. When this thing first started, every death we heard about COVID was like a big deal. And now we're at a point where we'll hear on the news, only 150 people died of COVID. So again, that's an example where we get kind of numb. So where am I going with this? So basically, when we're dealing with all these emotions that are coming out, it's really important for us to have spaces where we can process those feelings and not postpone them for later, because they'll just come out later. And that numbness might have benefits in some ways, but when the numbness runs out, then what? And the other piece of it is that when we're numb to our distressing feelings, we're also numb to our positive feelings. So then we miss out on the things that can feel good in our life that we can enjoy. So with that, I encourage you to find the spaces where you can process your feelings. First of all, if you're feeling a lot of feelings now and feeling overwhelmed, there are really, really good reasons for that. And it's sometimes we get into this judgmental place with ourselves about why we're feeling a certain way. All our feelings make sense. All our feelings make sense. And sometimes they might come at times that seem odd, but it doesn't need to seem logical to us. And really just about kind of having those spaces where we can process our feelings, whether it's with other people, whether it's going to exercise or journaling or meditation, or just finding spaces where we can process the feelings that we may not have tapped into before. And then we're able to find more of this middle where we're not stuck between the extremes of numb or overwhelmed, but actually able to kind of cruise in the middle. So with that, I'll see you guys next week.